The Chicago business scene is as diverse as the city itself, but we don't always hear from the entrepreneurs who keep the Chicago economy colorful. That's where I come in. I'm Mikai Brown, and this is the Minority Report. From Compton to D.C. to Durham, North Carolina, and now Chicago, Halleemah Nash makes a mark wherever she goes. She's worked with Nike, the UN, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, Joakim Noah, and currently runs Israel Idonije's foundation, just to name a few. I caught up with her to talk about how she manages to navigate the cross-section of sports philanthropy and entrepreneurship on a daily basis. Growing up in Compton, how has that shaped the way that you do business in the philanthropy world today?
Well, I think that civic pride is so much more than just acknowledging where you're from. I think that civic pride is about also acknowledging how that upbringing has shaped who you are as a person. And for me, growing up in an inner city where I saw so much that most inner city kids see in the south side of Chicago or in Watts or in Oakland or in certain areas in New York and cities all over the country where you have impoverished backgrounds, being able to see all of those things, I always wanted something more for myself. I always wanted something bigger, something better, something more positive than what you see on the street corners. And so when it was time for me to think about what I wanted to be when I grow up, or when I thought about what kind of business I wanted to have, I wanted to make sure that that business, that my finances, that my resources reaches back to those same communities that I grew up in. And I don't know that anyone has more civic pride than I do coming from Compton, California, because it's a city that taught me how to hustle, that taught me how to make sure that regardless of what you don't have, that you do what it takes to make sure that you get what you need.
You've worked with athletes like Joakim Noah, Israel Idonije, Luol Deng, and Dwayne Wade. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, the interesting thing is I worked at the Chicago Bulls for 5 years. That was my introduction to the sports philanthropy world here in Chicago. And I became a student of sports charity. I wanted to learn how appearances worked into their collective bargaining agreement. I wanted to learn what their passions were in terms of what kind of impact they really wanted to make. And I was doing so much of that in the Chicago Bulls off season that I branched out to NFL clients. I branched out to U.S. track and field athletes, and even colleges and universities in their athletic departments. And the whole overarching goal was, how can you really make sense of what charitable development is and allow athletes to see the huge stage that they have, the huge microphone that they have, and their ability to create sustainable social change.
How would you rank the Chicago sports teams in terms of, are they being productive enough within the community?
I think so. I think that teams like the Chicago Bulls, having a player like Derrick Rose, who is in the Inglewood community, I was extremely impressed that they immediately began additional programming in the community of Inglewood when they signed Derrick Rose. I was so impressed with the Chicago Blackhawks when they revamped their whole marketing plans a few years ago, that they started to target historically black colleges and universities, when they acknowledged the importance of minorities in their fan base. We see a lot about violence in Chicago, about this terrible epidemic that's happening in our communities. And even though there is not one answer and there's not one way to solve the problem, I've been very impressed by all of the teams that are in the area that are doing things to support out-of-school time activities, to support educational opportunities, to support pre-K opportunities, so that they can really target these individuals that are being highly impacted by this problem and letting them know that they are important.
So being a woman in such a male-dominated field, especially something like professional athletes, what have been some of the adversities that you've faced in this position?
Well, you really have to fight to keep your integrity. I think that there are certain things that might be thought about you if you are a woman working in sports. There might be certain things that, certain labels already affixed to you when it comes to you saying that you own your own business and you're a woman in sports. So you have to fight against those, not by yelling at people and telling people you're not this and you're not that, but by having integrity about yourself, by making sure that even if you think that I'm not that smart, even if you think that maybe I'm not serious, because that's your perception of young women that work in sports, by what I produce, I have an opportunity to, if not change your mind, then to impact how you might think about that stereotype.
Tell me about some experiences that you've had that you would say have shaped the woman that you are today.
Well, I would say one specific experience was really failure. I have learned how to fail better. I've learned how to take not getting a job and not getting an opportunity and not landing a contract as fuel and not something that says that I'm inadequate or that I'm not enough or that I'm not smart enough or that I shouldn't be in this business. And I think that when I was an undergraduate and in certain instances in my life, I've taken failure as a statement that maybe I shouldn't be in this business. Well, if I've applied for 17 jobs in sports and I haven't gotten any of them, it probably means that I shouldn't have a job in sports. When actually it just means that you need to work a little harder, you need to network a little bit better, you need to position yourself, Halleemah, in a way that regardless of what comes at you or what doors are closed, there's a door for you. There's a door for you that's ahead at some point in time. Just be patient with the process.
I'm going to flip the script on you.
Yeah.
When do you feel that breaking the rules is ever okay?
Actually, there are more instances than a little when breaking the rules is okay. You know, there are some times where I talked about being ambitious and being a go-getter and doing what you have to do. One of my great mentors, who I've never met, of course, but he's just my mentor from afar, is David Geffen. I mean, David Geffen lied on his resume in order to get a job at William Morris. Now, that was way before social media and background checks and all that good stuff, but he did it so that he could be granted an opportunity, and he worked within that opportunity to secure one that he felt like he deserved and he was ready for. So that's not to say that I'm condoning people lying, but that is to say that there are times where you might have to get your hands dirty in order to get what you want.
Getting those hands dirty.
Getting the hands dirty.